It has to do with you've got inflation in some sectors, deflation in others by design. You've got a managed, controlled global economy with the Anglo-American establishment at the top, but China and Russia as major players. This is a serious situation. And I know I state the obvious here. You've got major gas deals going on right now between Russia and China to supply China all the oil and gas they need. That's what's happening. And this is not being done. The globalists are not trying to destabilize Russia and China right now because they want to help America. They want Russia down. They want China down. They want the U.S. down. But with China as the strongest overall to be the main UN police force in the future. That's all been stated by David Rockefeller, Zbigniew Brzezinski. I mean, you can go pull up op-eds they've both written in the New York Times on that subject, endorsing Chinese communism as the model. Because it isn't really communism. It's a tiny elite with slave factories everywhere calling it communism. In fact, the last Chinese president, before the new one came in, was in the BBC. He was quoted, and he said, I forget his name. I just remember reading the quote over and over again on air. In fact, people could probably search engine this. Chinese communism is the ultimate expression of pure, perfect capitalism, was the quote. Chinese communism, Chinese-style communism, is the perfect and pure expression of capitalism. And people said that doesn't make any sense. No, to the globalist it does. It's a managed capitalism with elites offshore above the law, with inter-party members over each country worth billions and billions living in giant pleasure palaces. You live in a loincloth in a coffin apartment that's less than 100 square feet when they're done with you. They live in giant palatial palaces with guards everywhere. Do you understand that? They want you poor to control you. Now let's play the Russian Prime Minister coming out and saying a new Cold War is basically starting.
Some decisions taken by the U.S. administration are disappointing. We have indeed done a lot for Russian-U.S. relations. I believe doing so was right. The agreements that were reached with America were useful, and I'm very sorry that everything that has been achieved is now being eliminated by those decisions. Basically, we are slowly but surely approaching a second Cold War that nobody needs. Why am I saying this? Because a competent politician knows how to make reserved, careful, subtle, wise and intelligent decisions, which I believe Mr. Obama succeeded at for a while. But what is being done now, unfortunately, proves that the U.S. administration has run out of those resources, and the United States is one of the parties to suffer from this.
But the globalists want more weapons sales. They want Russia to have to spend its money on weapons instead of development. And then the globalists, by creating destabilization, they stand to gain. And I know I'm stating the obvious here. It's just that it's hiding in plain view. And the general public, I'm actually starting to hear anti-Russian talk in restaurants and on the streets and on talk radio. And it is just ultimately stupid. The Russians are collapsing. Their population is collapsing. The Soviet Union collapsed. They're just trying to get back on their feet. And we don't stand to gain by a Cold War with the Russians any more than we do having the Middle East destabilized and Al-Qaeda put in charge everywhere. So this is a big, big deal. And we'll open the phones up and get your take on this as well. But do you see how everything's moving at once? They're rolling out that, yeah, the domestic military and militarized police and armored vehicles and tanks is for veterans and gun owners. Yeah, we think you're going to start blowing stuff up. Any moron can see that the globalists are the ones that have the motive, the history, and the means to do it. So we're just waiting for that shoe to drop, that balloon to go up. I'm going to get into this Libya situation. We're going to get into study shows no shortage of high-tech workers in the U.S. Yeah, there's a glut of high-tech workers. They want to drive down the wages even more. People say, well, that's fine. That's free market. No, it's not free market to compete with India and China that basically are in slavery, where people live 20 people to a room. It's a race to the bottom. Ross Perot was right. It's basic economics. Look, Canada opened up free trade with us 5 years ago. Their average worker, industrial, was getting $35 an hour. It's $15 an hour 5 years later. Our average industrial worker, $20 an hour. You go to Mexico, it's going to drop down to 10. Now, do you want that to happen? This is not going to build up society. It's going to implode it. Well, I tell you what, Ross Perot was 110% correct. But Al Gore laughed at him, and that's all that mattered. He was right, Al Gore. Let me just give you some of the headlines that are coming up. White House vows CIA will not stage fake vaccine programs. Former Prime Minister of Malaysia accuses CIA of covering up MH370 disappearance. That's some of the news on that front. Fed's latest land grab, designate contested New Mexico area a national monument. We're going to be getting into that report. We're going to be breaking down this extremely important article that's the top story up on Infowars.com. In fact, I'm going to have this story red-linked because it's so important. The plan to kill the internet uncovered. Breaking. 10 ways the freedom of the World Wide Web is being dismantled. Or 10 ways the internet is being dismantled piece by piece, is what I would say. Paul Watson and I both wrote this article together. And it breaks down the 10 ways they're killing it. We're going to be going over that starting at the beginning of the next segment. And this subject's going to be the main focus of the next issue of the magazine. And again, you can say, well, I don't care if the internet's free. I don't care if they don't, censor. It's going to be economic. They first have to censor political speech, and then they can censor everything else, ladies and gentlemen. That's how it works. They want to economically be able to keep you from having your businesses, your products online, or charge you a prohibitive rate for access to it via the telecoms. You're already paying for it with your connection. You're already paying for the bandwidth of Netflix and everything else. They attempt to charge Netflix and the end consumer to get to Netflix or to get to Infowars.com or DrudgeReport.com. And it's not just that. The head of the FCC came out. See, I'm already covering this. I'll cover it in the next segment. Last week and said, look, they want to bring in fairness doctrine, federal elections commissions, the same folks that have had Dinesh D'Souza arrested. He's now pled guilty. I guess because they'll go light on him if he just gets probation for getting his friends to donate money, something Obama does, times a billion, literally. I mean, it's just insane. Obama's gotten billions and billions and billions and billions and billions, most of it seedy, corrupt donations, illegal donations. And Dinesh D'Souza, what was it, like $30,000 he got his friends to give? Bundling. Now they're saying, well, it's not 30, it's 15,000. To a U.S. Senate campaign of his friend. I mean, this is just wild. The intimidation of political giving that isn't the Democrats. If people were persecuting the Democrats like this, I'd come out against it. And this is serious. You should have gone after the pro-lifers, everybody else. Obama supporter brags about illegal foreign donations on president's own website. And remember that article? In fact, print me that, please. It's so incredible how open they are with the foreign donations, all of it, and the hypocrisy of it, the corruption of it is mind-boggling. So we're going to get into that report. We've got a new report. Wisconsin police reassure residents they won't be shot at from military truck. But then we have in Indiana, the police getting the same giant armored vehicles from Iraq and Afghanistan. The globalists just produced more and then said, oh, it's surplus. Here's a brand new one. By the way, they're building more. Oh, yeah, that's surplus too. No, they are arming and training the local police. And in their own words, we'll play the clip again. It's for veterans. They're the enemy. We need this for the veterans. What did Big Sis say 6 years ago in those internal documents? And then she doubled down and defended it to the Associated Press. Returning veterans, gun owners, conservatives, libertarians, pro-lifers, Ron Paul supporters, Chuck Baldwin supporters. You know, I wasn't in that first MIAC report. Aaron Russo, posthumously, he'd been dead for a couple of years when that came out. They said his movie, America, Freedom to Fascism, that just exposes the fraud of the IRS. Why, that's terrorism. Now, on many of the other reports, I'm very honored by that. But I want to be on the list and the top of all the list. Like John Hancock, signed his signature so big. So it was a death warrant to do it. If they didn't succeed, your family, your children, your treasure, your name. So he signed it bigger than everybody else's, John Hancock. And I am just completely insulted that I was not in that original report. But now, and of course, now I'm in all the big new ones, and I appreciate that. In the White House reports, you name it, thank you. That's a badge of honor.
On the march.
That's like the Congressional Medal.